Phone vibrated at 3 a.m., and Emily's heart nearly stopped when she saw the words on screen. Michael said, "We need to talk." Her chest tightened as if every promise had been pulled from her lungs. She whispered, "Why now?" Shadows from the streetlight painted her lonely apartment with pale streaks of fear. The silence was louder than the ticking clock on the wall. Emily said, "After weeks of waiting, this is all I get." The memory of his last message still lingered, words soft with devotion, but now poisoned by the cold sting of uncertainty. She walked barefoot across the wooden floor, clutching the phone, her trembling hands betraying the strength she once claimed. Michael had always been distant, across oceans and time zones, but his voice had been her anchor. Tonight, the anchor cut deep instead of holding her. Emily said, "If you're leaving me, at least let me hear it." The city outside was alive, but her world was frozen in betrayal. Fear, love, and desperation tangled inside her until she could no longer tell which one was breaking her first. Emily scrolled through the old texts, her chest aching with every word that once felt eternal. Michael had written, "Forever isn't long enough with you." She whispered, "Was forever just 2 months?" Memories blurred with present pain, and every glowing screen felt like a cruel joke. She said, "You built me up with promises, and now you're tearing me down with silence." Outside, the rain tapped like mocking fingers on glass. She walked in circles, each step heavier than the last. Michael's absence was no longer measured in miles, but in unanswered messages and sleepless nights. Emily remembered their first call, Michael's laugh echoing like sunlight breaking through clouds. Tonight, it was replaced by silence colder than steel. She whispered, "You used to call me home." Her thumb hovered over the call button, fear keeping her from pressing it. She said, "If I call, will he answer, or will she?" The thought made her stomach churn. The shadows in her room stretched longer, like claws grasping for her hope. Michael's silence was no accident anymore, it was a choice. Emily said, "I sacrificed birthdays, nights, and dreams just to keep us alive across oceans." Her voice cracked as she stared at old photos taped to the wall. Michael's smile beside her in those frozen moments mocked her now. She whispered, "Was I building my life around a ghost?" The truth crept in like smoke. He had been drifting while she was drowning. She pressed her forehead against the photo, desperate to feel his warmth through paper. The ache was unbearable. The phone buzzed again, a new message appearing. Emily's breath hitched, her heart pounding. She grabbed it, praying for Michael's voice. Instead, it was Sarah, Michael's colleague. The message read, "He fell asleep here again." Emily's knees buckled, the phone slipping from her grip, clattering on the floor. She whispered, "He's not mine anymore." Her body folded inward, pain spilling like glass shards across her chest. The betrayal had a name, and it wasn't hers. Emily sat curled on the couch, clutching a blanket like it could replace Michael's arms. She whispered, "I stayed awake through countless nights just to hear your voice." The phone beside her was silent, its screen dark as if mocking her hope. She remembered every morning she set alarms across time zones, racing to catch his calls before classes or work. Emily said, "I built my days around you, and now they're breaking without you." She felt the emptiness of rooms she decorated with his promises. Even her textbooks smelled of him, because she studied with his voice in her ears. Tonight, the silence was unbearable, pressing against her ribs. She pressed her hands to her chest and whispered, "I kept believing love could survive the distance. But was I only convincing myself?" The window rattled from the wind, but Emily's mind was louder. She whispered, "I stayed loyal while everyone told me to let go." Her friend Olivia had warned her countless times, "You can't build a life waiting on someone who isn't here." Emily ignored the advice, blinded by the warmth she felt every time Michael said, "You're the only one who makes me feel at home." She thought of Olivia's voice again, harsh but honest. "Don't mistake neglect for sacrifice." Emily's chest tightened. She whispered, "If you're right, then what was all this for?" The question echoed with no answer but her own tears. Emily pulled out the shoebox beneath her bed, filled with printed screenshots of texts, tickets, and photos. She whispered, "These scraps are the only proof I wasn't imagining us." She remembered the night Michael had stayed up until dawn, sending her songs, calling her his future. That future felt like ash in her hands now. She said, "I saved every piece like a child clutching stars, but stars burn out, don't they?" The papers shook as her fingers trembled. The inked words looked faded, stripped of the love they once carried. She whispered, "If these words don't mean forever, then what does?" Emily held her phone to her ear, listening to Michael's old voicemail greeting. His voice, warm and teasing, said, "Hey, it's me, leave a message." She pressed the phone tighter, whispering, "I left so many messages you'll never hear." She thought of the nights she fell asleep with the phone against her pillow, pretending the static was his breathing. She whispered, "I kept you alive in the silence, but maybe I was keeping myself from living." The sound of his recorded laugh made her heart break all over again. The world outside moved on, while Emily stayed frozen. Couples passed by her window laughing, their voices twisting the knife. She whispered, "I gave up so much waiting for you, jobs, nights out, even myself." Her voice cracked. "Every choice was for us, but you're not here to see it." She remembered the birthday she spent alone, staring at a cake she bought for two. Michael's message had come hours late, reading only, "Sorry, busy." She whispered, "I believe distance was proof of devotion, but maybe it was only proof of denial." The truth began to sink in, slow and merciless. Emily sat by her laptop, waiting for the green light of Michael's name to appear. Hours passed and the screen stayed empty. She whispered, "You promised you'd call tonight." Her coffee had gone cold, untouched. Each tick of the clock gnawed at her ribs. She typed messages, then erased them, afraid of appearing desperate. She whispered, "Do you even care if I'm awake here for you?" The truth was sinking in. His absence was no accident. Her mind spun with images of him laughing with someone else, living freely while she sat chained to hope. Emily finally saw Michael's name online. Relief surged through her veins, but minutes turned into half an hour without a message. She whispered, "You're here, but not with me." Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, desperate to type. Then his status blinked off. She said, "You couldn't even send a hello." The silence grew heavier than a storm outside. Lightning flashed through her window, as though mocking her, illuminating her loneliness. She whispered, "I'm not your priority anymore, am I?" Her heart pounded with dread. Emily's phone buzzed, but it wasn't Michael. It was Olivia. She answered, forcing her voice steady. Olivia said, "You're breaking yourself for someone who doesn't see you." Emily whispered, "I have to believe he still loves me." Olivia sighed, "Belief isn't proof." Emily's eyes burned as she snapped, "You don't understand." But she knew Olivia was right. Olivia said softly, "He isn't there, Emily. And he isn't coming back the way you want." Emily hung up, tears dripping on her shirt, silence suffocating once again. Emily scrolled through social media, her heart cracking at a photo. Michael laughing with Sarah, his arm casually around her shoulders. She whispered, "So this is where your nights go." Her pulse thundered. She remembered every excuse he gave about being too busy. She whispered, "Busy with her." Rage and grief collided inside her chest. She slammed the phone down, then picked it back up, unable to look away. She whispered, "You replaced me without even saying goodbye." Emily slammed the laptop shut, her body trembling. She whispered, "Every time I try to hold on, you slip further away." Her walls were covered with their pictures, once symbols of hope, now knives cutting into her. She whispered, "You were my anchor, but now you're the storm." She collapsed onto her bed, clutching a pillow like it was him. Her sobs shook the room, drowning out the thunder outside. She whispered, "You're here in every corner of my world, but not in my life." Emily's phone buzzed again, a vibration that rattled through her hollow chest. She glanced down, expecting silence, but her heart sank when she read Sarah's message. "He left his jacket here, tell him to pick it up tomorrow." The words pierced her like shards of glass. Her breath caught, and she whispered, "He was with her again." She read it once, twice, then a third time, as though repetition might alter the truth. Her fingers trembled so violently she nearly dropped the phone. She whispered, "You didn't even bother to hide it." Memories of nights spent waiting, of calls missed for reasons he swore were work, came crashing down like a tidal wave of betrayal. She staggered backward, pressing a hand against the wall as though it might steady the storm tearing through her body. She whispered, "I gave you my devotion, and you gave me lies." The screen glared coldly in her palm, an enemy more than a lifeline, proof that her love story had already been rewritten without her. Emily scrolled further, each swipe dragging her deeper into betrayal. Sarah's profile was filled with moments Michael once reserved only for Emily: laughter in cafes, smiles captured mid-conversation, his hand brushing against Sarah's as if it were the most natural thing. Emily whispered, "You didn't just forget me, you replaced me." Her chest heaved, her pulse thundered in her ears. The cafe lights in the photo looked golden, soft and safe, everything her world no longer was. She whispered, "All this time you said you were working late." Rage surged, fiery and unstoppable, burning away the fragile denial she had clung to for months. She threw the phone onto the bed, then snatched it back up, unable to tear her eyes away from the glowing evidence. She whispered, "Busy with her." Each word left her mouth like a blade. Her hands trembled, her body split between fury and despair, as if both emotions were fighting for the right to destroy her first. Emily lunged toward the drawer, pulling out the bundle of letters Michael once sent, promises immortalized in ink. She spread them across the bed, fingers shaking as she read the same words she had once memorized, words like forever and home. Her chest convulsed with a sob as she screamed, was every word a lie? She ripped one page in half, then another, the sound of tearing paper echoing like thunder in the suffocating silence. Fragments floated down to the floor, scattering like snow made of ash. She whispered, "You told me I was your forever, but you were already building another life." The letters blurred through her tears until they were unreadable, until they were just broken paper. She collapsed to her knees in the wreckage, surrounded by the very promises that once kept her alive. Her fists clenched around scraps that cut into her skin, the pain physical proof of a love that had turned to ruin. Suddenly the phone rang, Michael's name flashing boldly across the screen. Emily froze, her body stiff with shock. She whispered, "Now you call." The sound of the ringtone filled the room like a scream, vibrating through her bones. Her thumb hovered above the green button, trembling violently. She whispered, "If I answer, will you lie again?" Her breathing quickened, shallow and uneven, every nerve screaming at her to press decline, yet her heart begged for a final explanation. She stood there locked in a battle with herself, her arm heavy as lead, her body incapable of moving. The phone rang and rang, the sound transforming into something monstrous, louder than her thoughts. And then, it stopped. The silence that followed was more brutal than any rejection. It was the void he always left behind, swallowing her whole. She whispered into the emptiness, "You only call when I've already broken." Moments later, a voicemail icon blinked on her screen. With trembling hands, Emily pressed play. Michael's voice poured out, calm but hollow, stripped of warmth. Michael said, "Emily, I think we both knew this was coming. I can't keep this going." Her lips parted in a silent gasp, tears spilling before the message even ended. His voice continued, each word like a blade. "I'm sorry, but it's over." She dropped the phone, its thud against the floor echoing like the final heartbeat of their love. She whispered, "You ended us with a voicemail." Her chest tightened until she could barely breathe. She whispered again, "I gave you years, and you gave me seconds." The weight of finality pressed down like an avalanche, burying her in a grief that felt infinite. She curled into herself, clutching her knees, her sobs breaking the silence that had once been filled with his voice. Emily dialed Michael's number, her hands trembling so hard she almost dropped the phone. When he answered, his tone was casual, detached. Michael said, "Emily, it's late." Her chest erupted in fury as she shouted, "Late? I've been waiting years, not hours." The silence that followed felt like chains tightening around her. She pressed on. "How could you let me fight for us alone while you built another life?" His sigh was heavy. Michael said, "You don't understand." Her voice cracked with rage. "I understood every unanswered call, every excuse, every lie." Her tears poured as she whispered, "You chose her over me." The words left her lips like a final judgment, her love shattered beyond repair. Michael's voice faltered. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this." Emily's body shook, her voice sharp as glass. She shouted, "Then how was it supposed to happen? Me waiting forever while you drift away?" The pause on his end was suffocating. She whispered, "You promised me a future." Michael's tone dropped, flat and unconvincing. He said, "I can't give you what you want." Rage burst through her tears as she screamed, "You didn't even try." Her words ricocheted off the walls, shaking the room. She whispered softer, but every word cut deeper. "You were my whole world, and I was just your spare time." Emily shouted, "I skipped birthdays, gave up jobs, stayed awake through nights. You never showed up. Was I the only one in this relationship?" Michael's voice cracked faintly. "I cared, but it wasn't enough." Her throat tightened as she screamed, "Not enough? I built my life around you?" His response was quiet, almost cowardly. Michael said, "I needed freedom." Emily's laughter burst out broken, bitter. She said, "Freedom? I was your prison." Her knees buckled as she collapsed, gripping the phone like a lifeline she both despised and needed. She whispered, "You took everything I gave and left me empty." Michael's voice came through again, softer now. He said, "Emily, I didn't want to hurt you." Her fury erupted like fire. She screamed, "But you did." Every silence was a knife. Every excuse was another cut. Her voice shook, raw, unfiltered. She whispered, "Did you ever even love me?" There was hesitation on his end. Then his voice broke slightly. Michael said, "I did, but not enough to stay." Her scream ripped through the air. "Then why make me believe?" Her fist slammed against the wall, her bones aching with rage. She whispered, "You let me drown while you breathed easy." Emily whispered, "Say it, Michael. End it to my face." Silence lingered until he finally said, "It's over." The words landed like bullets, splintering what little remained inside her. She dropped the phone, its thud echoing like the sound of finality. Her chest heaved as she folded onto herself, body trembling uncontrollably. She whispered, "You ended me with a sentence." Her tears blurred everything into haze, the room spinning around her. She whispered, "You'll keep breathing while I keep bleeding." For the first time she realized the love was gone, leaving only a scar to carry forward. Emily sat slumped against the wall, the silence in her apartment heavier than bricks. Her phone lay face down beside her, a useless weight now. She whispered, "So this is what the end feels like." The torn letters scattered on the floor surrounded her like the remnants of a war she had lost. Her fingertips brushed across the shredded paper as though touching a corpse. She whispered, "I thought I couldn't breathe without you, but here I am." Her chest ached, ribs straining under invisible pressure, yet she was still alive. The thought carried no comfort, only a strange, jagged strength. She said, "Maybe surviving is all I have left to do." The words drifted into the silence, fragile and raw. In that moment, grief and resilience coiled together inside her, unwilling companions bound to the same wound. Morning crept in through the blinds, streaking light across Emily's swollen face. She sat on the edge of her bed, eyes hollow, breath uneven. She whispered, "The world keeps moving even when mine doesn't." Dragging herself toward the mirror, she stared at the woman staring back. Her hair was tangled, her lips pale, eyes ringed with shadows. She whispered, "I don't even recognize her." Her reflection was not Michael's girlfriend anymore. It was a stranger carrying the weight of betrayal. She reached out, touching the glass as if to reassure herself she was still real. Her whisper carried resolve for the first time. "If you won't see me, I have to." The words trembled in the air, but in them lived the first seed of something new. Emily walked to the wall covered in photos and mementos, the shrine she had built for Michael. Her hands shook as she peeled one down. She whispered, "You don't get to own my space anymore." Another photo followed, then another, each one falling into the box on her desk. Her breath caught as she paused over the image where they were smiling together, sunlight on their faces. She whispered, "These moments don't define me, they remind me." Tears slid silently down her cheeks as she pressed the picture into the box. The silence in the room shifted, no longer suffocating but strangely empty, like space waiting to be filled. She whispered, "I'm allowed to take you down and still stand up." Her words steadied as she stacked the box aside, reclaiming the walls for herself. Olivia arrived that afternoon, knocking gently before letting herself in. She found Emily on the balcony, wrapped in a blanket despite the sun. Olivia sat beside her, their silence heavier than words. Finally Olivia whispered, "You look like someone who's finally letting go." Emily gave a small broken smile, her lips trembling. She whispered, "It hurts more than I thought possible, but maybe that means it mattered." Olivia squeezed her hand. She said softly, "It mattered, but so do you." The words landed deeper than Michael's absence ever had. Emily's chest cracked, but this time it wasn't breaking. It was releasing. She whispered, "I don't feel free yet, but I'm not chained anymore." Olivia nodded, eyes kind, grounding her like a lighthouse in the storm. That night, Emily stood by the window, city lights flickering beyond the glass. Her breath fogged against the cold pane. She whispered, "You'll never know how much of me you destroyed." Her reflection looked back, tired but unbroken. She exhaled again, words trembling like smoke. "But you'll never know how much I'll rebuild either." Tears traced her cheeks, but they fell softer now, less violent. She rested her forehead on the glass, the hum of the city below carrying her into a strange calm. For the first time, the silence didn't feel like abandonment, it felt like hers. She whispered, "I'll live in this silence, and I'll grow from it." The city lights blurred behind her, not promises, but reminders of everything still waiting to be lived. Emily sat on her bed, the shadows long and heavy. Her phone glowed faintly in her hand. She opened the contact list, staring at Michael's name one last time. She whispered, "I can't keep you here anymore." Her thumb hovered, heart hammering. She pressed delete, and his name vanished into nothing. Her chest ached as if erasing him had carved a piece of her out too. She whispered, "This isn't letting go, it's surviving." The silence in the room thickened, but this time it was hers to keep. She placed the phone down carefully, almost reverently, as though laying a ghost to rest. The weight on her shoulders shifted, not lighter but different, like stepping onto new, unsteady ground. The next morning, Emily walked through the park, her coat pulled tight against the cold. Couples strolled by, hands clasped, their laughter piercing. She whispered, "I used to envy them, now I just ache." But, as she walked, each step steadied her, pulling her further from Michael's shadow. Her breath puffed white in the air, disappearing into the winter sky. She whispered, "You don't get to own my future." The ache remained, deep and stubborn, but it no longer dragged her backward. For the first time, the distance between them wasn't prison. It was freedom. She adjusted her scarf and lifted her chin against the chill, her path opening forward instead of circling around his absence. Back at home, Emily opened her journal, the one filled with Michael's name scribbled across countless pages. She whispered, "I wrote you into every line, but tonight I write you out." She picked up her pen, crossing through his name in thick strokes, the ink bleeding under her tears. She whispered, "This story isn't ours anymore. It's mine." Her hand shook, but the movement carried defiance, carving space for herself where he once lived. She whispered, "I'll carry the scar but not the chain." Closing the journal, she pressed her palm against its cover, as though sealing her promise. For the first time, her story felt unfinished, but it belonged to her alone. Emily lit a candle by her window, the tiny flame flickering against the night. She whispered, "You'll never know the nights I cried for you." The city stretched endlessly beyond, lights glowing like false promises. She whispered, "But you'll never know the nights I'll survive without you either." The flame wavered, fragile yet resilient, a mirror of her heart. She leaned closer, her breath fogging the glass, exhaling his name one last time. It left her lips like smoke, vanishing into the cold. The silence pressed close, but it wasn't suffocating. It was a cloak she could wrap around herself. Midnight passed quietly. Emily lay in bed, her phone turned face down on the nightstand, screen dark wall. She whispered, "And that was the last time your name ever lit up my world." Her tears slowed, exhaustion weighing heavy in her bones. She whispered, "You'll fade into silence, and I'll rise out of it." Closing her eyes, she didn't feel relief, not yet, but she felt release. For the first time in years, she fell asleep without waiting for him. The final blow cut deep, but in its shadow was the faint outline of survival, the scar she would carry, and the strength she would grow into. The silence became her lullaby, haunting but hers.